welcome. Good morning, good night, shalom.
Shalom.
Are you ready to dive into this podcast? I'm excited.
Yes, I am. And we have a guest speaker as well.
We do. His name is Rom'EL Terry. This brother, I have to tell you, he is a sponge in the knowledge category when it comes to a lot of things. That is for sure.
Yeah, so, I'm glad to have you here.
I appreciate it. So I definitely do.
Yeah, so today, as I promised, we're going to be talking about the new Jim Crow laws. And so we have a guest speaker, which is Rom'EL Terry. I had asked him to come out, and he was more than welcome to come out and share his knowledge and all. So we're going to first, segue off into some of the old Jim Crow laws that were there within the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. And once again, we're going to talk about bringing up just a few scriptures on how Yah had talked about if we are disobedient and don't follow his laws, and how he has dispersed us, our ancestors, to various different nations. And of course, a part of that, we also had to suffer, through the Jim Crow laws, with slavery at first, and then from slavery, the Americas developed new laws which kept us enslaved and all. And we're going to even talk about some of those new laws that are even going on today. So we have some interesting slides that we were able to present today. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks may not like to see what but I think you can't hide these things.
No, it's our history. Mm-hmm. That's the history.
So this one, we talk about some of the segregation and all, and it has to do with even, some movie theaters. They were segregation. I remember growing up, I was born in the 60s, and I remember growing up and my parents would have the Green Book. And the Green Book, and actually had just recently got one, probably about a couple of years ago, and it's even in a frame. I'm just remembering within this Green Book, there were certain restaurants that blacks could go to, or hotels that they could go to. Other than that, you couldn't travel across state and just show up at any restaurant. I remember growing up, even going out to Oklahoma, where our relatives were from, and going to a rodeo. And even within the rodeo, there were separate water fountains one could drink from. They had the white and they had the black water fountain. It's just interesting and how all of this stuff kind of comes back to me. I remember I had a best friend named, Butchie, stayed right across the street, and he was white, and father worked for the fire department, and we played, caught lizards together, caterpillars, and then they turn into butterflies.
Yeah.
And then, one time, his birthday, and I remember I was so excited because he had invited me, and I'm, running across the street, ready to get into the vehicle, and I look inside, and it's just Butchie sitting there, and his mom says to me, "Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry, we just don't have enough room." And I remember not understanding that, and I remember the song that was on. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. And I remember running back across the street and into my room and climbed underneath the bunk bed. And I remember my mom coming in and sitting there and tapping the bed and saying, come up and let's talk.
Yeah.
and that was the first conversation that she shared with me, and I must have probably been around 5 or 6. And my mom telling me that it's not that Butchie doesn't like you; he's still your friend. But there are certain places that they don't allow blacks to go. And I remember saying and asking my mom, "Well, why do I have to be black?" And you know, for a child to question why does he have to be black, you know, now I'm proud
Yeah.
of who I am, but you know, to where that had an effect on me, you know, so that was segregation back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this other slide here, you know, shows that this is history of you know, where we come from, and you know, and we'll talk about, you know, the Jim Crow laws, you know, right after the abolishment of slavery and all, and you know, how it must have made, you know, a lot of individuals feel. But these laws are still today. They're still going on today. You may not identify, you may not see them, and that's why we have, you know, Rom'EL here today, so that, you know, he's going to bring us up to date on some of these things that are, you know, happening to us. You know, so I mean, let's talk about that. Even the generation today, you know, I don't think that, because it was in your face back in my day.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, how would you speak to that today?
I would say one instance comes to my mind. You know, being in my, I want to say maybe 20s, maybe early 20s, and going into this mall, and it was in more of a like a ritzy kind of area where predominantly it was mainly white folks inside the mall. And just remembering just being stared at the whole time, you know, and I just felt like anytime we went into a Pacific shop, like the security guards were, you know, paying, you know, close attention to me, you know, and I'm like, man, like, I just feel so uncomfortable. Like, I obviously they're making it known that you're not wanted here, and we're gonna be watching you your whole entire way.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, that was an experience. I was like, man, like this stuff is still here.
Yeah.
You know.
Or certain neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you're looked at, you know, you don't belong in this neighborhood.
I got a short example of that as well too. There was a time me and a couple of my friends that went to a party, and I mean the party was probably about 5 blocks away from where I live, but where we lived technically definitely wasn't a black neighborhood where we were living in my high school days. And as soon as we arrived to the party, I'm with 2 other black males, and it's an all-white party. As soon as we walked in, you could feel it's almost like a movie, like the music stopped, you know, like and everybody's looking. And then out of nowhere, someone in the very back of the room, there's a living room and a kitchen full of just, you know, young adolescent white females and males. Someone in the very back screams out, "It's getting dark in here." And instantly, we were like, okay, we know what type of party this is.
Yeah.
So you learn that, you know, it's not just about who you are, it's also about their learned behavior.
Do you think discrimination, it's not just, you know, one-sided? Do you think it's discrimination on the other side as well?
I think so, but I think it's a little more reactionary. I think we learn to stay away from different parts of where they're at, and we also learn that even in that respect, we also see there may be discriminatory behavior, but it's not in so much a negative light. Like if you think about it, our behavior, say if a white person came to the hood, technically, right? That white person would be protected.
Right. Okay.
Like, that white person's not in danger. Like, they have nothing to worry about. They, as a matter of fact, black people will still be afraid of them because we would think that they're a police officer or something else. So it's a double-sided coin in my belief.
Yeah. You know, I put it, Zechariah chapter 14, verse 2 reads, "For I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the house rifled, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into captivity, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city." And so we look at even the black Hebrew Jews and how they were treated. You know, I was looking for a passage in New Testament that kind of showed something, and I did find one. It's actually in the book of Luke, and we'll kind of talk about that. But I can imagine, the Hebrews and how they were treated. I don't know if they were called, niggers, or, but definitely no Jews, right? And but if you look at it, they were a people of shepherding flock, right? Sheep and cattle. So we do know that they were frowned upon. They were looked at as a lower class, compared to the Egyptians, right? Egyptians wanted to have nothing to do with them. They were considered unclean, because they were shepherds and of the desert and all this here. Do you see some similarities?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, but it's not so. Today, I wouldn't say it's due to any occupation or anything that we, do anymore. It's definitely just off of our existence or our existence in their area. We make them uncomfortable. They see it that way. We see it that way, and they have a perpetual hatred. And it's funny. It goes back to our conversation earlier. They really do feel like, and I'm not. When I say they, let me put it in context. Those who of the unrepentant heart. That's why I like to identify them.
Not all. Not all.
Exactly. Not all. Those of an unrepentant heart. If you can understand the circumstances that the so-called black people are in, then you either have compassion for them or you don't, and that's that. So with that understanding, when I say they, that's what I mean.
Right. And here's a passage, Luke. I was kind of talking about, Luke 21, verse 24. "And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are filled." And it reminds me of Genesis chapter 15, when the Lord is speaking to Abram. And I'll just read this. Genesis chapter 15, verse 16. It says, "In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sins of the Amorites have not yet reached its full measure." And, do you believe that, God's word is true? Even here it's talking about until it meets the Gentiles, until they meet their sins meets its full measure. Well, we know, 1619, we've been exiled, and put off into slavery from Africa, and I like to say from the true land, promised land, exiled, and then it's since that time it's been 2019, 400 years, and it's done and over with, so we're looking at the fulfillment of these last days, and we know that one of the fulfillment is that Yah is gathering all of his people. He's heard our cry. It's been the 400 years. Our descendants have gone through a lot. I even hear individuals say, "Well, that was your descendants. You're not going through what they went through." And so I want to kind of speak on that, as this maybe goes together with the new Jim Crow.
Yeah.
I definitely see it this way. With those people that I'm speaking of, they read the Bible and they don't understand it. When they read the Bible and it shows that Israel's paying for the sins of their forefathers, I don't see how you can't relate that to you in your life. And that's a conversation I have for them. If you see that the actions of your forefathers caused pain and suffering for those after, especially in a biblical context, why wouldn't that be applicable to you as well too? I mean, if I do a wrong and that wrong affects my children, you see the direct correlation. If I go to jail and that child no longer has a father, you see it. But for some reason, what your ancestors have done to mine, you don't see a connection or correlation there. I am profoundly bewildered.
And you know
with that
what though?
understanding.
But it's also even, as us as Hebrews, like we were still paying for our ancestors, for our descendants. Like we were paying for that.
Right.
So we're still, held up to our punishment and our I wouldn't even say punishment, our chastising by our Father. So I don't see why you would expect that you don't have any consequences to it. To finally say, like, we got to own up to this. All this is going to come to a point.
And that's where I want to give my shout out to Mark Crutcher. Rest in peace. He had a complete understanding. He had one of his podcasts talking about how he can't understand how his primarily white Christian circle does not understand that the evils that they have done, they will have to answer for. And if he had that understanding and he shared it with his people, I pray that those words took to heart and somebody repented off of that understanding. But from what I have gathered and what I see on a regular basis, the majority will not.
Yeah. And I always, I love your illustration of, the slave owner and the slave, with the journalist coming on, and it comes down to, being having empathy versus sympathy. I don't, with us obviously, because these are our ancestors, and when we see these pictures, when we see these things, we're feeling sorrow, we're feeling pain. So I honestly don't get it. I don't understand how, the other side doesn't feel anything,
Yeah. I like this slide here, Joel, chapter 3 and 2. And it reads that I will also gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them. They're an account of my people, my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations. They have also divided up my land. So it seems as if there will be some judgment.
Yeah.
And the majority will not repent.
So it sounds as if, there are those that may repent, and praise be to Yah, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
that, yes.
But then there will be those whose hearts may be hardened, as Pharaoh's was. And can you speak a little bit more on that? I know you mentioned one of the quotes are about the sympathy and empathy. And I like that with the slave master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from what I've gotten, from that, it's just saying that they can't walk in our shoes. Nor will they understand the rocks that are inside of it.
Right.
They're feeling what I can see, not what I could feel.
So there's a difference in sympathy.
Oh, most
empathy.
definitely.
So sympathy would look like as the slave master, and here's the reporter, and the slave master is bringing the reporter over to the slave's home, right, shack, and he sits back, and the slave master sits back, and he says, "Oh, I treat my niggas good." He sits back and he says, "I got Billy Bob over here. Billy Bob, don't I treat you good?" Billy Bob sits back and says, "Yes, sir, master. You treats me good." And Billy Bob, didn't I just get you a nice refrigerator that you can put your meats in? "Yes, sir, master. You got me a nice refrigerator to put my meats in. You's a good master. See, I told you I treat my slaves good." He says, "Billy Bob, don't you're able to get the best of the crops here?" "Yes, sir, master."
Yeah.
So that's sympathy versus empathy. He's
yeah.
not putting himself into the slave shoes.
Nope.
Right? Absolutely. And that would be hypocrisy, to where it's deception, right? And I do believe that those are out there that are really like that.
Yeah.
Rom'EL, we're gonna bring you on, but I want to just touch real quick with Booker T. Washington, right, and W.D. Du Bois, and we know that about both of them and how they were different, right, and how Booker T. Washington, he was more all about, well, he was against that of segregation, right? Well, he was kind of he didn't fight against it. He was all about education. He was one that was, and I'm glad what he's done, because if it wasn't for, the institution and all and starting up schools and stuff for blacks and all, that's great. This is during the Reconstruction period. So here's Booker T. Washington, and he's more about the education. And he's basically, hey, let's not rock the boat about, segregation. Let's just, if they want to segregate it, that's fine. Let's not fight against this here.
Can I say this though?
Yeah.
I have to say, I love that about him.
Okay.
I feel that he knew, in a sense, that if we were going to fight it, that I hate saying white folks, but that they were gonna hide our education or try to dumb it down. And here's Booker T. No, he wanted to elevate his people by teaching them everything. So I believe, my personal thing, mixing it up caused so much pain.
Yeah. It's like a sword and a shield.
Yeah.
We look at Dr. King and we look at Malcolm X. I think both were needed.
Yeah.
There may be those that sit back and argue with me on that. But I think that there's a time for that, Martin was needed. I think there was a time that Malcolm X was needed. Malcolm X was more militant, and he basically says, hey, I'm going to speak your language. You talk about coming into my home, then I'm going to definitely, have something for you. But gun cocked and all, you shoot at me, I'm going to shoot back at you.
Yeah.
So, I think that was needed as well.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate both Booker T and I do appreciate W. Du Bois as well. I think they were both needed at the time because, Tuskegee student stuff, it kind of showed what the African Americans were capable of doing and striving when it came to education. W. Du Bois, we know that he was definitely opposed to the Jim Crow laws. And he was a civil rights activist and socialist and all this here, and we wouldn't have the NAACP today. That's another topic or issue. I sometimes question.
Yeah.
Does the NAACP, really is as potent as it does it do what it's supposed? Is it doing what it's supposed? What it was designed to do?
Does it care about the CP?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. With that said, I want to just turn it over to you, Rom'EL, in regards to the new Jim Crow laws and what's going on today.
All right, I want to throw a couple fun facts in there for the original Jim Crow laws. Wanted to let people know that some of the things that were implemented back then definitely still have remnants of it today, especially the fact that back then whites weren't compelled in any form or capacity to help blacks, even in the medical field. So if you really think about that, you got to let that sink in. So a black person comes into a hospital, say it's an all white staff. That staff doesn't have to lift a finger for that person. And that's deep to me, because you take an oath to get in those positions, but you can deny the oath because of the person. So that level of depravity really strikes me. Interracial marriage. Alabama was the last to get rid of it, and that was in the year 2000.
Wow.
Fun fact, exactly. Year 2000. And in Louisiana, with handicapped black people were not allowed to receive service or in any type of service or any type of help in a facility where white handicapped people were. I mean, you talk about like kicking someone when they're down. All right, so yeah, I'll leave it at that. Just a few fun facts, and we'll go ahead and throw a little more in there just to spice things up. A little fun fact a lot of people don't know about the Natchez Punch Bowl. Now, this doesn't have to do with Jim Crow. It's previous to Jim Crow. It's right at the end of the Civil War. Right at the end of the Civil War, there was a discussion made on those people's side. They were worried about 20 or so thousand by what the numbers were reported. 20 or so thousand freedmen, technically freedmen that fought in the war and their families. They were worried about what they were going to do since the war technically was won. So what they did is they carved out an area where they wanted them to live in Natchez, Mississippi. And since they didn't know what to do with them, they just kept them there. They held them there. They basically kidnapped them, to be honest with you. And so what they did was they kept them there. They were allowed to grow their own food and everything, but they were doing small experiments on them. Small experiments, and also restricting them from leaving completely. So they were implementing little experiments that had to do with smallpox and so on and so forth until they wiped out all these people. So much so that the people that live in Natchez, Mississippi, will not eat of the fruit that grows in the grove where those people were, because they know that fruit was nourished by the bodies of those people.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a documentary you can look up as well on YouTube as well, and I mean that's pretty deep and sickening.
Sounds like the Tuskegee experiment with syphilis.
But this is how less known it is. My wife's family, who only about 4 hours away from that same said area, knew nothing about it. And this generation I'm talking about is the generation of basically the children of those who would have known all about it. So that's how well hid that is.
Wow.
That's crazy.
We'll go ahead and jump into these new Jim Crow laws, though. Okay, so new Jim Crow. It's all about justification. So back then, when they had the original Jim Crow, they didn't need justification. Everybody was on the same page because they didn't like us. So it was okay. It was okay to do what they needed to do to keep us under. But people started getting educated. People started learning. People started having levels of compassion for us. So what did they do? They find ways to justify the actions they commit against us. So they use the 13th Amendment as a loophole. 13th Amendment, you break a law, you can be a slave. So let's change the game. Let's make sure that we make a pipeline for these people to break the law. A couple examples I have of that. In Louisville, Kentucky, if your child is called truant, you and your child can both be arrested and put in jail.
Oh yeah, I've heard it. Yes, yes.
That right there is mind blowing.
Yeah. And I actually used to work on the school board. You're talking about the truancy.
Yep.
Yeah, and work on school boards and definitely notice some of those things that took place.
And they do it in places where they know they can get away with it. You know, they know exactly how to place. You're not going to see anyone in, let's just say, San Ramon, California, where they're going to have to worry about going to jail for their child not going to class. If he skips a class, like, well, Billy, where were you?
Right.
All right. Another example I have of that, of course, was the stop and frisk in New York. Honestly, depending on your point of view, if you trust the police or if you don't trust the police, that's up to you. That's your own understanding of things. But when it comes to the stop and frisk law, if there's quotas that need to be met, these officers will do anything to meet their quotas. They do the stop and frisk and say they see somebody that they know has a history. They can do whatever they want and make sure that person is locked up for it. So say if this police officer has a little bit of drugs on him, and he stops and frisks this guy and pulls out that same bag of drugs that he had on him, that person's going to jail, no questions asked, for the rest of his life. If that amount matches, or if the strikes match. So there's so many ways that they operate the new Jim Crow laws, and with that, I mean, it's evident in everything they do. Not to mention the disparity between the jail sentences between hard and soft cocaine. We all know that there's a specific group of people that are more prone to hard cocaine, and there's a specific group of people that are more prone to soft cocaine. Both drug users, though. Let's not get it twisted.
You're talking powder cocaine.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Same cocaine.
Yeah, the same cocaine, just in a different form. Literally, a blade makes a difference.
Versus crack or versus, yes.
All right. So with that, you get caught with that hard rock, man, you can lose your life in the system. And we all know once you go in the system, your life is virtually over. You get caught with that soft, man, you may not even see any jail time. It may not even go on your record. They may let you walk. Now, that's pretending the skin color, though. Let me not get
Well, because in use, I mean, powder cocaine, it's a lot more expensive, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you find a lot more Europeans buying the powder cocaine.
Yes,
Okay.
most definitely.
I just want to clarify some things.
Exactly. And you see that all the time. I mean, and let's just take drugs out of the way, right? Because we all know that war has never ended against us, and that is a war that was put on us when we don't own any poppy or opium fields. We don't own any boats to bring this stuff in.
Well, they're coming over here.
Exactly.
Right.
Somehow it's getting over here, and we're getting caught with it. So once again, another way of creating a pipeline that new Jim Crow implemented.
Let's get this into their neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have documents that prove that were released by the FBI and CIA that prove that this is true.
Why is it that I notice I go to a low-income area, I can find a liquor store.
On every corner.
I can find a liquor store on every corner. You can literally count them, 5, 6, 7 of them. But if I go to a wealthy neighborhood,
Got Starbucks.
yeah, absolutely.
You know the nature of the beast. The nature of the beast says, let me find every way to destroy these people. And and like I said, I don't sit here and really hold it against said people. More than anything, I hold it against their mindsets. That's the thing, right? No matter what you say, the current state of this nation is not due to us, right? But even still, they find a way to blame us for the current state of this nation. And it's like, we've never been in power. We've never been in power. We've always been targeted. We've always been piggybacked. We've always been the ones to get destroyed on a regular basis. And when you think of it that way, how can you sit here and judge us about your nation falling apart when you literally created laws to make sure we would never get in a position to be the judges of your nation?
You know, and it's kind of like, you know, if we put it in an illustration of track, right? You got your European on that lane 1. You got the blacks in lane 2. Then they gonna shoot the gun, pew. Then the guy says, nope, lane 2, stay back. Let me count off 5 minutes. Then it's like, okay, 5 minutes gone. Okay, now you can go. Oh, there's a hurdle. Jump that hurdle. But lane 1, there's no hurdles. They've had this 5-minute, before us. And they're the ones that's causing all these stumbling blocks. All this time, they're delaying us. And I just want to make it, clear that they were aiming to destroy black families. Taking the black man, the Hebrew man, out of these homes to where the Hebrew woman now has to...
Incentivized.
Yeah, you get more food stamp cachet if the man is not in the home.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of an Old Testament Bible verse, which is in the book of Numbers, Numbers chapter 22. when the children of Israel were entering into the promised land, and there was Balaam, right? And who was a priest, so-called priest, that was being paid to hinder the Hebrews.
Yeah.
And so you see the same thing.
Yes.
And I think it's very important that we as Hebrew Israelites, now that we know who we are, that this is history that has been done, from biblical times even till today,
And repetitive.
yes, and trying to cause us to sin in some way, so that Yah will not bless us.
And that makes me get into my very last point. Even with these sins, right? Obviously, we know if we go to jail, right, with the new Jim Crow, you go to jail, when you come out, you're still in jail.
Yes.
You are still in jail. No matter what you do, you are still in jail. Try to find a job. Try to provide for your family. Most of the time they don't like to hear this understanding, but it is what it is. Most of the time when these black men go to jail, it's because they aren't given a lot of opportunities. Now, of course, you can earn it through real hard work and so on and so forth, but you could also work really, really hard and not be given anything. So when these black men go to jail, they go to jail for doing petty crimes. But they don't face the same repercussions that the other side faces. But when they face this petty crime and they come back out and say they want to get their life together, that opportunity is not going to come.
Yeah. You're
stuck. Once you got that jacket, it's over. You got someone, it is a struggle from there on out.
Yeah.
You may be blessed, you may not be. So with that understanding, right, they made Jim Crow the new slavery. And also, another thing that affects our counterparts more than anything, they now have got it to where they have to poison every aspect of the home, like you were stating earlier. They take away the man and they give the woman reasons to act a certain way. Not ways that are productive to us as a whole. All right? We could go so many routes, like women being extremely promiscuous, right? Or showing off their bodies every turn and corner, right? And doing it so much so that other nations take part in it because we are the trendsetters.
Yeah.
Like we were supposed to be the salt of the earth. So people are gonna look to us for everything, all trends, everything. So if our black women act a certain way, all these other nations are gonna do the same.
It flips what our true role is supposed to be.
Yes. That subtle beast got a hold of it.
Yeah. I mean, as Hebrews, we're supposed to be the priests.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be the ones teaching, other nations how to pray, how
So
to
much
worship,
so.
how to serve Yah.
So much so, we were actually being played right after they figured out sending us away wouldn't work. Now, mind you, there was a time period where once they figured out we got free, they came up with a plan to send us back to Africa. That's how Liberia got started, right? So once they figured out that wasn't really fiscal, they really couldn't work that out, they came up with another big plan. You know what that plan was?
Was it Plan B?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood, eugenics, right? Now, this is a part of Jim Crow because it is all a plan to destroy who they understand as black and who is biblically Hebrew. So, when they use eugenics, right, and it's funny to me because I got in an argument with someone on YouTube about how Margaret Sanger is a racist. The words literally came out of her mouth. She is the creator of Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And they try to say, let me try to bring up the quote of her words. She said, "We have to reach out to these churches so the rebellious Negro doesn't believe that we are out to destroy the black people of America." Okay, so there's a couple things that stand out to me in that. The rebellious Negro. All right, that stands out to me because it's like, okay, the rebellious Negro is rebellious because he doesn't want you destroying his seed. I guess I'll be rebellious. Because the bottom line, that doesn't seem rebellious to me. That seems just.
Right.
All right. That is an understanding that you're coming for my people and I'm not going for it. Another thing that sticks out to me is that they went to the church to get pastors to combat us. So that's a whole nother thing in itself as well too. They use aspects of us to destroy us. And that's deep. That makes me feel some type of way as well too. And then the fact that they have to push it upon our women because they are that important to us. See, people always minimize the role of the woman when even Yah said to Adam, it's not good to be alone. You don't understand how strong that statement is. People let it go all the time. They think it's just words, but no. You don't understand the child's first teacher is a woman. And so many things you're not giving them credit for. But if you pay attention to the current state of us now, you have to give her that credit because you see where we are when we have unrighteous women in head instead of the righteous image of a woman.
Well, Rom'EL, thank you so much for your wisdom and bringing us up to date on the new Jim Crow laws. Just want to close out with just one question, for you, and it may be a two-part. How do you feel? I'm getting a lot of opinions about the United States, and I'm hearing it's not our homeland, and then I'm hearing others saying that the Promised Land, there in Africa, is our homeland. So how do you feel about the new Jim Crow laws here in America? Do you feel it is our homeland? And I'm just going to let you answer and close us out however you would like to close us out with that.
All right, so excuse the language. I'm not going to cuss, but there is no way in hell America is our land. And when I say in hell, I compare it to. Because, for one, you will never be able to fully worship our Yah the way that you want to here. And that's the biggest thing for me. When I have to worry about how I'm going to provide for my family every waking morning, when I have to worry about if the people outside of my home are going to break into my home and take what I have, when I have to worry about all these things where there is no measure of peace that I can tangibly articulate, then this is obviously not the place for us. Okay? Now, I am a strong proponent of leaving this nation. I think it is a part of the system of Babylon. It is so. If you can't honestly see that I can't tell you anything. But at the same time, you never move without Yah's blessing. Never do. Never do anything in haste. You've been in this system. You know this system. When he's ready for you to go, it's going to get so uncomfortable you can't help but go. And me personally, I'm getting to that point. It's so uncomfortable. Y'all knows what moves me. I love my family. I love my children. I love my wife. I want the best for them. I want them to experience peace that they have never known, and many generations before us have never known. And so if I'm gonna find that somewhere, I know it's not here. It can never be here. People who call themselves American can't experience peace here, and this is their land. You know, I mean, their stolen land, but their land nonetheless, from what they say. So no, I'm definitely a proponent of leaving. Don't do it without Yah's blessing, but at the same time, there is no way America is our homeland.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, I don't know. There might be a part two. I know our time is coming to an end. But man, there's a lot that's still going on today. So I would say let's not be the deer that runs into the open headlights and it's just like, what? He's coming at me. Let's be led by the Spirit, having discernment, and just open your eyes and truly see what's going on around you. And like always, be prayed up. Good night, good morning, shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.